Hello there and welcome along to episode 32 of the Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue. The club season is heating up. There's a load of managerial changes happening about the place. Big news though, Paddy. We released our bloody Teams of the Year last week and our Twitter accounts have blown up left, right and centre.
Never got as many mentions.
Can I ask you this? Have you finally found it in your heart a way to forgive the All-Star Selection Committee of 2015 after going through this week?
I can see how they get put. You know what the big thing is, right? Whatever about the All-Stars, at least we're putting our names to this team selection. Like, we've put out our rationale behind it. The big thing with it, they're objective. Like, so, like, not everyone's going to agree with you, and we've seen that on Twitter this week. But we either picked our teams, both in the Talton Cup and the All-Star team. Not a peep at anyone on the All-Star team, by all accounts, but Jesus Christ, that Talton Cup team is after causing chaos. Like, I've never got as many mentions on Twitter in my life as I did for putting out that Talton Cup team. Like,
Jimmy, the Canavan crowd weren't happy. But sure, we can't have everyone in. We can only pick a team, and there's only one in every position.
You got a lot of credit from Sligo, James, for your ability to pick.
They were thick as well. Like, Sligo wanted a few more lads in as well, by all accounts.
They wanted 10 at least, and Canavan wanted 15 out of 15.
Could I just say on Canavan, right? Because I was getting, they seem to be the most aggrieved. Canavan had 4 players in this team. They duffed the final. They scraped through the semi-final against Sligo. Like, they're doing well to have 4 lads in, to be brutally honest. Like, so, yeah, okay, there's a few tight calls, but like, how many did they want in? They didn't win the team.
But a lot of the tweets we got were that they've been their best players all year. But we had to get rid of the National League.
Not interested.
Include
National
that.
League and Ulster Championship were not included. It was the Talton Cup. There's always players going to be thick. But for Canavan, I'm going in. I'm standing up on this. You didn't win the thing. You were brutal in the final and scraped. Like, Sligo should have beaten them. Patrick O'Connor could honestly have scored 6 goals in that semi-final. We know that. And then they're the guys that are most aggrieved. They want 10 players in. It was like Jimmy trying to pick the All-Star team, put the whole Kerry team in. Like.
No, I was fair. You were trying to swing all your mates. James McCarthy.
I wanted 6 subs in as well. It's funny though, isn't it? Like, the All-Star selection seems to have went under the radar, and the Talton Cup is causing absolute ruptions.
It matters. These things matter.
No, but you know what, Tommy, in seriousness now behind it, it is good that these conversations are happening. That's what the Talton Cup was brought in. It's been a brilliant success. We said that. But for these counties and these players who are probably not in the mix for all-star debates and things like that, just with the old season, that these conversations are now happening. And there'll be an official Talton Cup selection. I'd be interested to see how that goes as well.
God help them.
We've done the dirty work for them already, yeah.
But it is, look, the conversations are good and these players are getting recognised. And yes, there's tight calls, and I know there's people and supporters who want their own players in. I totally get that. But it's hard though, isn't it? There's always going to be people tick with you for not putting in their lads. But I am standing over our selection. And Canavan, you got 4. You did well to get 4.
Well, I tried to argue our way through a couple, listen, it was a close call, they were in the mix, blah, blah, blah. And next thing, Keane Mackey comes along and just... What can you say back to Mackey when Mackey tells you Jared Smith was their player of the year and Jason McLaughlin should be in it too?
Well, Jared Smith seemed to be the biggest one that was people were annoyed with. But like put McKiernan in the half-forward line. I would have had McKiernan slightly above Jared Smith. And he wasn't going in ahead of Ronald, who was, I think, the best player in the Talton Cup.
Yeah.
And then Sam McCartan was one of Westmead's best forwards as well.
That's the way I looked at it. They were saying that put him in wing back, but maybe that's what
wing back.
He did play a bit of football wing back now. He was alternating between wing back and half forward. But
I was actually trying to be fair, I was trying to get Killian Clark in as well. So Canavan, forgive me for this.
Yeah, sure, look at lads. We've exciting news this week. We have a special guest on the show. Paddy Tally is joining us. Kerry's much heralded coach for the season that's just gone by that brought an All-Ireland title. Paddy Tally's been involved in intercounty football since he was a pup. He played with Tyrone in around the 90s. He was on that 95 team that lost to Dublin. It was on the squad, sorry. He was an extended member of the panel. At 29 years of age, Mickey Hart brought him in as his number 2 in Tyrone when he was appointed in 2002. Tally coached him to the first All-Ireland title in 2003, left Tyrone then, spent a couple of years in Mary's, went on and was called into Down in 2008, stayed in Down for 4 years, went up to Derry with Brian McIver. They come up against you, Paddy, in a 2014 league final.
Yeah.
I think you were playing a couple of weeks before that when you got beaten by Derry, and then you wiped the floor with Derry in the league final in 14. And then he had a couple of years outside of intercounty football, coached Mary's to a Sigerson title against the very heavily fancied UCD team.
I remember it. Yeah.
They bet UCC in the semi-final too. So, then he went in with Galway, Kevin Walsh in 2018, and then he was over the Down team for 3 years, 2 of those years being COVID years. And then Jack O'Connor gave him the call in September. So I'm looking forward to this. James, he went down a treat in Kerry this year.
An absolute treat. Just from reading a few articles over the last while, just about from when he landed first. Of course, there was a bit of kind of just a reaction to the fact that he came from Tyrone and and the northern teams, and the way Kerry want to keep it all in house. But my God, it was unbelievably successful. I mean, what an addition it was. Straight away, you could see the way that Kerry had set up both attacking and defensively. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that with him. But brilliant. I mean, he just absolutely repaid everything, and he's done a great job. So I can't wait to see exactly what he has to say about the Kerry boys. Hopefully he's a bit of gold.
Positive, yeah.
100%. We are on episode 32 of the Football Pod. Do hit subscribe if you haven't already. We'll have plenty more episodes over the winter. We'll be back right after this with Kerry coach Paddy Tally. All right, you're very welcome back to episode 32 of the Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue, and we're delighted to welcome our special guest to the show this week, Paddy Tally. You're very welcome. How are you?
I'm good, lads. Thanks very much. It's nice to be here. A lovely sunny morning up in Galway here, so it's a dog walk, coffee in, and ride a rock.
Fantastic. What a way to start the morning.
Yeah.
James O'Donoghue, this man went down a treat in Kerry this year.
An absolute treat. He did, in fairness. I mean, do you know what? As much as managers and everything are important, and the nutrition, the sports science, your football coach is, I think, the most important role inside in a dressing room, because you're basically taking the players' hour and a half and you're structuring what they're going to learn that day, what they're going to take in, and your voice has to be so powerful and kind of so measured and delivering the right message. And a lot of teams, they only kind of bank on having a great manager or a great backup team, but you have to have the coach right to have any success in intercounty, I think.
Paddy, is that what it was this year for you? You were the football coach really in Kerry.
Yeah, that was the role. Jesus, before we start, lads, it was an absolute honour, and I'm supposed to speaking to James here. From my point of view, to be asked to get involved with Kerry. If you sort of understand where we come from in Tyrone, we grew up with a diet of Kerry football and Dublin football back in the sort of the 80s, and especially the 80s, like the late 70s, early 80s, when we really didn't have anybody competing at top level. So Kerry football's got a great place in our memories, childhood memories. So I'd never dreamed that one day you'd be actually coaching the Kerry football team. So when to get involved with the players and Jack and the entire Kerry setup was a real honour, and but with honour comes responsibility. So I was very clear that what the remit was, you had to be successful. So I knew from the outset that we, whatever we do here is about winning the All Ireland, and anything short of that wouldn't have been a success. So that basically was me getting in to coach that team as best I could to try and get them over the line, and thankfully it worked out.
Would you say you get as much kind of a feel-good factor about winning in Ireland with Kerry than you would with your own county, or was there any difference, do you reckon, or how do you reckon that was?
Not a chance. We had a far better time. We won it in Tyrone the first thing.
This is what happens, Paddy. The Kerry lads just get excited here already. Would you rather win with Kerry than your own county?
No, I said, was there any similarities?
I'm going to tell you something here. On Tuesday, we were in Tralee, and met me and Big Murph were coming across from Killarney on the Tuesday morning, and we're having a bit of breakfast before we head into Lee, and he says, Paddy, he says, you're going to see Kerry in all this arrogance today.
We're well used to that, Paddy. It's not our first rodeo. We've seen this before.
That was waiting 8 years to come out, like, so.
Jesus,
you can excuse that.
No, listen, in fairness, it was different. It was different, but really, really enjoyable too. I think it's quite, when you know, winning with Back and Throw 2003, I don't think it'll ever be matched for us, but that was our first ever. The outpouring of emotion, because like coming from the county with never success at senior level, we knew it was coming. There's good minor teams, good under 21 teams, and then all of a sudden we pulled the senior one off, and that probably was something that will never be never be matched, you know. But certainly in terms of the enjoyment and the satisfaction, James is right up there as well, because you know I think there was a lot of people said, did you enjoy it? And to be honest, it's not an enjoyable process. You know, it really is. You enjoy it when you win, and when you have success. But during the whole time, especially coming up to the week before from the quarterfinal in, it's heavy, full on. So I think when you win it, it's just an outpouring of emotion and relief as much as anything else. But it was the crack was 90 in the week after that. I mean, you know, it was good. You know?
It's unbelievable, Paddy, isn't it, to say that, because obviously we've been fortunate to win all Irelands ourselves as players, and I would echo that 100%.
Yeah,
it's hard to do it without a doubt, and particularly like I say when it gets to the business end and you're playing the top teams and there's massive pressure, and particularly like say in Kerry there's an expectation to win. That if you don't win the All-Ireland, and we had it with Dublin and our team as well, if we didn't win the All-Ireland, that was failure. So there's massive pressure. And my overriding emotion, and we spoke to a lot of lads on this after you finally do it, is relief. It's people like, it's not necessarily elation or you're ecstatic. It's just like, we can relax now. And then you're right, the week after the All-Ireland is the best week you'll ever have in your life. But it is massive pressure, and it is that relief when you finally get it done.
It is, and I think when the weeks preceding the game, you know, from the quarterfinal, and it was you're full on everything. You had to make sure you're hitting every box, and it was a real challenge because the Mayo game in the quarterfinal was a game where, you know, we beat them well in the league final, and we beat them in the league match in Tralee that night, and there was always that, could you beat them 3 times in the one season? And so there's always that wee thing where you had to get the players right for that. When they get over that, then they had the Dublin game, and I think the Dublin game was the perfect game for Kerry to have, because you know that game where the old Dublin won from the All Ireland a few years ago. It was probably time that Kerry stood up and beat Dublin in a big championship match. So that was a massive thing, and you seen yourself at the end of the match. There's a massive outpouring of emotion. The big challenge was to get the feet back in the ground, because last year, suppose Mayo beat Dublin and then come up short in the All Ireland, and you really didn't want that to happen again. You didn't want a substandard performance in the final based on the fact you'd just beaten Dublin. So the challenge was before the middle of that next week, that you had all that was out of the way and you're really focusing on the final. So there was that constant psychological battle you had to fight to make sure that everything was right. And in fairness, the players were very, very strong, and they're very good and mature in the way they approach things. And when you got to the final, really, it was a matter of getting a performance that was good enough to beat Galway. And you always knew that there's going to be the Ireland finals are never won early. You're going to have to keep going towards the end. And I always referenced that your team, Paddy, the great Dublin team at the start. If you remember those games, like there's very few of those finals Dublin run away with. They were always coming down the stretch, and it might have been the boys coming off the bench that made the difference. So I say there wasn't probably a very close symmetry to how the final panned out this year too, to the Dublin victories in that great team, you know. So I think it was a matter of just getting the job done, and then you have that immense sense of relief, because I think that those fellas, they just need to get over the line.
You said Paddy, right? Sorry, Tommy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering, do you know, with the shorter season, right? So you had the quarterfinal, semi-final, final, fairly bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
As a coach, like, you don't have much time there. So I know it's intense, but like, how much time do you get with the players to actually work on something new? Or is it a case of, we'll just kind of refine what we have, seeing as you don't have the time? Like before, I mean, when you won it with Tyrone, you probably would have had at least 3 weeks before every game, maybe even 4 to work on new things. But this year it was recover, and then you probably have 10 days to a game.
Yeah, I think you're right, James, and that's the best part of it. In fairness, those 4-week breaks or 4-week breaks between matches are killer. We had I think we had 4 weeks between the end of the league and the start of the championship, and then we had 5 weeks between the Munster Championship and the All-Ireland quarterfinal. So those weeks were very hard to get in. And the National League's a brilliant thing because you're going week on week. Yeah. Apart from 1 week, we have 2. I think it's for the Sigerson weekend or something, but in between, you're going all the time. And I think the players much more enjoyed that. So whatever systems you have in place from the National League, you can tweak things for the championship, but there's no point in introducing an awful lot of new stuff. I think it become confusing. So you're just trying to, as you say, James, you're refining the system, you're refining the way the players are playing, and maybe adapting and tweaking things just to suit the opposition you're playing. But you got to have a bulk of the work done now early in the season because of the way the championship's going to happen. You need to just be bang on, have your work nearly all done earlier on.
And Paddy, for you, you're absolutely right. Players love that because the shorter the break between games, the less hard training you have to do. So we always enjoyed the week on week of the National League. But it is funny. This is the first proper season post-COVID where it is far more condensed. And I know from our experience with Dublin, we wouldn't have done a whole pile during the National League in those years because we always had the guts of 6 to 8 weeks after the league and before the Leinster Championship starts, and we do a lot of work, nearly our pre-season in May, and that because the structure of the season allowed us to do that, and coaches bloody loved that because that was their window. We had Declan Darcy and Brian Cullen and these guys, brilliant guys, who really kind of earned their corn during that period. For you, it's interesting to hear you say that you enjoyed it, the shorter season, so you're not probably getting as much time during the season. A lot of stuff you have to do coming in with Kerry is kind of January nearly, or December or January, and then it's just week on week, really. Is that?
Yeah, I found this really different this year in Kerry because, in Ulster here, we have a proper, really competitive Ulster Championship where you know that if you're getting a team ready for that, you're into a real battle. And this is different because in Kerry, you have 2 matches. That's the first thing. You have a semi-final and a final and a Munster Championship. And in Ulster final, if you're drawn out in the preliminary round, you have 4 games before you get to that. Yeah. So and those games can be really, really competitive. So I think it was. I found it really difficult this year. You'd Cork in the semi-final, and then you'd Limerick, and then you're sitting in the quarter final. That doesn't happen. It really is, boys. You nearly have to experience the championship up here compared to the Munster to see the difference in it. So with only having 2 matches, and in fairness, you sort of knew, right, if we beat Cork in the semi-final and then you have Limerick and you're going to get to quarter final, it's a completely different process. So you do what you tend to do is you need to train your whole way through that. So you're nearly doing another mini pre-season during the Munster Championship, and you're rattling a good bit of hard work because you know that there will be a time when you're 10 days out from the start of the quarterfinals that you're starting to taper down towards the remainder of the season. So it's different. Up here you can't get that. Up here you don't have that. Up here you have to have all the work done prior to the start of the Championship. If you're not ready for that, you're not going to make it through the first round. You certainly can't win it anyway. So it's a different. The Ulster teams have to prepare differently, and I think this is why I'm really looking forward to next year. For the way the new format is structured, that there's equity in terms of time and within the games. Everybody's in the same position, the same dates, and I think it's going to be a game changer for all county setups that they can prepare, knowing these are the dates you're going to be involved, and everybody's in the same position. And I think, by the way, it's no advantage in Kerry or to not have games. I think it's a disadvantage that you have these periods of not having competitive high-end games. So I think that getting that, and this is back to James, I suppose, how many times have Kerry been caught in quarter-final games in the past? Been caught coming in that wee bit cold, where they haven't had a tight game and then a team comes through the back door with a bit of a run or can catch you out in a quarter-final match. So I think that from a coaching point of view, it's much easier when you're going to be going week on week. At the very most 2 weeks in between. It's a far better system.
You were coaching down in 10 when Down beat Kerry in the final, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you remember the hand pass that was given for a throw ball from?
Look, you lost, Jimmy. Just get over it. Like 12 years later, you're giving out about referee decision. Jesus We're all
I remember that one. All right, I remember that one. Right, it was controversial, all right, wasn't it? But listen, James, that was the day. Like, it was a perfect storm. It was pissing rain in Croke Park. You boys had come through the handy side, and we were coming through a battle-hardened qualifier. And it was one time to get, if you want to catch Kerry, that's the day you catch Kerry.
That was some team as well with Marty Clark and Marty Clark. I was obsessed with Marty Clark after that. I loved him. He was just outrageous.
Did you put the socks up?
I never got to put her on the socks up, but that was one step too far. But he was savage.
Listen, that if I had to come back on my coaching so far, that's the one regret we didn't pull off in All Ireland that year. Like, we had lost the final bit of point to Cork after beating you boys, after beating Kildare, and then get pipped by Cork. And that would have been someone to win, like, because they were coming from Division 2. They were coming from absolutely nowhere out of the. We had been beaten by Tyrone in the semi-final, and but there's we got momentum through the qualifiers. And the ironic thing about it is Ambrose Rogers, who's outstanding that day against you guys in the quarter-final. Ambrose was our captain, and they put in a round of club championship matches in between the quarter-final and semi-final.
What? Oh my God! You serious?
Yeah.
Don't tell me.
Experience there from the county board.
And we lost, and Ambrose done us cruciate in the club match.
That is ridiculous.
Oh man, listen, we talk about it. Even like Mark Dorn, who's from Longstone, the same club. We were actually talking about that a few weeks ago, and we talk about it so many times. Why does that happen? Because I still believe if we had Ambrose, who was playing some football that year, I think we'll be able to handle Cork in midfield, because with no backup middle of the field, we're really struggling for. At that time, you had Aidan Walsh and Alan O'Connor, Pierce O'Neill,
Graham Canty, all of
them. They had four.
Pierce O'Neill, Jesus,
big Manchester men, and we went into the final with Callum King and Pete Fitzpatrick. And Pete was only I think Pete was only 19 or 20.
A young fella, yeah.
He's only a young fella, and we'd nothing to bring on the bench. Whereas Ambrose would have been our starting captain midfielder, and we end up losing the game by a point. And I'm not saying we'd have won it, but.
Paddy, isn't that the frustrating? We had Michael Meehan on a couple of weeks ago in a live show before the final. And Michael, the same, was speaking about there's a finite amount of opportunities you get to win an All-Ireland. And couldn't believe Michael Meehan, one of the players of his generation, never even got to play in an All-Ireland final. You know, that just he was coming at the end of a great Galway team and before the coming of the next generation. So he's saying when you get an opportunity, and for down that 2010, you're right, it was kind of out of nowhere. Like, having beaten Kerry, our Dublin team we lost to Cork in the other semi-final, and we were only kind of starting to get the show on the road at that point, that there was an opportunity there, and Down have never got close again to get there. So when it's that one opportunity, it's like, if you don't grab it with both hands, it's gone. It's gone so quickly. And that, like, losing one of your best players to an injury, like that, to be fair, that Cork team, they were knocking on it all for a long time as well. Like that was their only one that they won. They'd lost to Kerry a couple of times, obviously, and they never got back there themselves either. Right. But such a frustrating thing when an injury is so avoidable. Bloody like club games, lads. I told you. This is the whole club scene. Get rid of it.
Paddy, people don't think you're joking when you say that.
I'm kind of half joking, but
Paddy, you'll be lynched to say that.
I'm used to it, Paddy. I'm well used to it.
You'll get lynched. No, but that you're right. And I look back to, you know, we in '95 we got beaten by Dublin in the final, and we never got back for another 8 years. And we thought that was a whole generation of a team gone, a good team. And we beat by Meath in the semi-final '86, and we thought, are we ever going to win this thing? And then it took 8 years later before we go back in 2003 before we won it. So the Down one was one that, geez, I look back at it, I would have loved to have won that one, because it really would have been out of nowhere to win All Ireland, you know. And the players, as you say, Marty ended up going back to Australia a couple of years after that. James, he stayed one more season, then back to Collingwood for another contract, and he can tell you what happened that time too. Marty was a prestigious young talent. We knew, you know, everybody up here knew this kid was unreal. And when he decided to come back, God, I remember when I was asked to go in to coach the team, first thing I said is Marty Clark's coming home in Australia. Because when you knew, in fairness, Ross Carr and DJ Kane had done a lot of work behind the scenes, especially Ross, to bring him out and or bring him back to play for Down. And when they got him back, like, you knew this boy's gonna light this place up, because nobody knows anything about him. The last thing they probably saw him was maybe playing college football, and and maybe a bit of
They
minor.
won the minor, Paddy, didn't they? In 05, him and James Colgan and those guys.
Yeah, they won that minor.
Star then, yeah.
That's right, and then he went away, but he come back as a professional athlete. He was conditioned, so much better too.
A lot of boys come back, Paddy, and the football mightn't be there necessarily. Marty Clark was the most stylish footballer in the game at that time.
He is. I tell you what he had the ability. He's the fastest I ever seen him getting the ball in his hand and gone again off the foot.
He loved it outside the left as well.
Oh Jesus! And he'd see a pass before anybody else, and he could execute the pass before even people knew what he was going to be doing with the ball. He had ability, and he's very accurate. And the fact is that nobody had seen him playing because but in the following year, every new right, keep this boy on his right foot, and people adapted to him the following year. But that first season, he was just immense, and he had such an influence in that team. He was just a down leader at the time.
Paddy, what's your record on that now as a coach? And these guys are coming back, and you see it. Like Killian McDade was an obvious example for Galway this year. That we had it with Kieran Kilkenny when he came back. Conor McKenna, obviously in Tyrone last year, had a massive impact. When these guys come back from Australia, like senior inter-county football is tough training. And over the last, it seems to get more intense, and guys are getting fitter and stronger year on year on year. And we've been in it. It's bloody savage stuff. Yet these guys come back from Australia, and they all seem to still be a cut above. I know they're professional. We're going, how are they so much fitter, and their endurance levels are even higher than a GAA player who's played 7 or 8 years of senior inter-county, where you're not far off professional, to be brutally honest. And I looked at McDade's performance for Galway against Armagh, for example, in extra time. He is still sprinted up and down the middle of the pitch. What do you see is the difference there? How is there still such a gap, or it looks like there's such a gap between our fittest and our best athletes in GAA than when the guys come back from Australian rules, and they still seem to be a little bit ahead?
Yeah, I think, generally it's a full-time job when you're there. So if you're there for 2 or 3 years, say even a couple of years, and you're part of your training, that's what all you do really. You train, you rest, you recover.
It feels like that in GAA as well sometimes, to be fair.
Yeah, but I think the big thing is they have time to recover and train harder the next time. Because, like, say for example, if we train a hard session on Tuesday night, the boys have to go to work on the Wednesday. They try and get a bit of recovery, and surely they have to work. They have to manage their lives around it, and then they're back on the Thursday. These guys will train on a Tuesday. They'll come in they'll train hard on Tuesday, come in the Wednesday, do a recovery session, they'll eat, they'll do a bit of coaching, they'll do a bit of kicking about, they'll maybe do something else on the bike, and then they'll go on the Thursday, they're doing another session. So, and everything's done purely to get that athlete to the peak of conditioning, because there's nothing else to be at. I remember when Marty came back, and it was really good, because at that time I was doing all the conditioning work to it, down the fitness work and the gym work, and putting everything in place. And I remember speaking to Marty, just picking his brain about some of the things they were doing. They have obviously they're one of the things they did a timed run. It was a 2K timed run, and the best time, I think he said, for him that time was 6 minutes for 2K. That
was a bike, was he?
on a run. So I remember thinking to myself, this is the benchmark for where we need to be. Now, in fairness, I think that up until maybe, I think we did a really, really ball breaking session, maybe the fortnight out from the All-Ireland final, and I think our boys were all coming in maybe 6:10, 6:15. That now I had a fella done some, by Seamus McEwen, a friend of mine who is a middle distance runner, and he did a good bit of really hard run with these lads. He would have coached trained the Cross Midland team to the All-Ireland clubs back in the day. And Seamus is a fantastic guy when it comes to picking a team and running. And we were coming in sort of not that far off. Some of the boys actually were right up alongside Marty in the runs. So, there was that fact. He was coming back, and he told me at times, like, you nearly got bored out there, because once you trained, you didn't know what to be at after, because you had nothing to do. It's different. The other thing was great, we introduced at that time as well, was creating Kenny's readings on players, blood, taking the CK levels out of their bloods, to see what the muscle damage is done post games. And that allowed me then to back off training and give boys recovery, which probably it was based on science rather than just on just me to say the boy needs a break, And that to me was a very important tool in the box. Now, it's not easy getting that done all the time, but again, it came from Marty's telling me in Collingwood. They would maybe come in on a Monday after a game, And if the CK levels were too high, they were just told, right, 10 minutes in the bike and get a massage and go home. So they were big into the recovery. And I think that's, lads, in fairness, I think if
I could get on board with those sessions.
I might come back, will I? Dust off the boots.
The problem, James, is you'd have to show the CK levels before you get off.
He'd figure out
find a way around that. Paddy, do you know the way you said you did the strength and conditioning, right? And then when you came down to Kerry, there was an idea that you were a defensive coach, kind of only. You kind of pigeonholed into that. Just
keep that going out there.
Yeah. Why was that? Or because obviously talking to the boys, you were obviously way more than just a defensive coach. But why did people just kind of latch on to the defensive side of it?
I have no idea, James. I have no idea. And to be honest, I don't know. You need to probably ask the people that say that, because it's not something that I would even. Obviously, you have to coach. You coach that all elements of the game. You have to get a defensive structure in place in any team to be successful. But it's only one aspect of what you do. Yeah. But I never really thought much about that. I know it's been muted, but I have no idea why.
Yeah. Could I ask, just touching on the introduction to Kerry and coming down, because I 100% agree with what you said initially at the start of this conversation around that Kerry Gaelic football is unique. There's a history and a tradition there where Dubs, even we look at it, and it is, there's not many, I don't think there's any county in Ireland where Gaelic football is treated like it is down there. And for you to come in, like say from a northern county, or just any, as an outsider going into the Kerry senior football team, there's a pressure there, and I agree that it can be it is a privilege to kind of go in and be asked to do that. What was the initial couple of weeks or first month or so in the setup where you're coming in? You nearly, and as players, we had guys come into our Dublin setup, and players are judging the coaches. There's no two ways about it. It's like, who's this guy coming in? What's he bringing to the table? And players can be as humble, and we're all nice guys, but we're ruthless as well. Mm-hmm. Coaches have to hit the ground running. What was that? How receptive were the players to any new methods you're coming in, or was there anything totally off the wall you're bringing in and the guys are going, geez, we haven't seen this before? What was that initial settling in period like for you in the setup?
In fairness, I never thought too much about it. Listen, boys, I was asked to do a job. I see it as a job you had to do. I don't look at it, I know it's a very serious job. Obviously, if you're asked to come and do that, and I don't really look at it any more than that. I have a very clear idea from when I'm taking a job on, but I have to get across to the players. I had a number of conversations with Jack prior to meeting the players for the first time, and once I was able to meet with the players, and rather than me coming and telling them what they need to do, the first thing I had to find out is where they were on things. So I did a session with the players away from the pitch where I took a lot of information from them, and that shaped the way I was able to approach how I was going to coach the team. So the first thing I would be aware of, no matter who you work with, you have to find out actually where the players are. Yeah. So that to me is an important thing to do. Once that was done, I had a fair idea, and that gave me an opportunity to talk to the players, gave me an opportunity to introduce myself and where I come from and what I'm about, and that initial conversation I think is a good icebreaker. And you do that away from the pitch altogether, and that was done maybe I think a week before I took the first, or a couple of weeks before I took the first pitch session. And then by the time the first pitch session was done, I knew exactly where I was heading with it.
That's interesting.
Was there any Kerry player that surprised you?
In terms of like jumped out from behind a wall or something?
In terms of their personality, their ability, like you probably had an idea of the majority of the players going down there, or maybe you'd seen them.
Clifford is good, isn't he?
Was there anyone that you went in there and they just took you by surprise straight away?
No, not really surprises us, James. There's probably kids I didn't probably know. Some young lads I didn't actually know, because the obviously you knew Shawnee and David, and you knew Dave Moore and Paul Murphy and Paul Geaney and lads have been about a number of years. I say that probably I say that one player really got it was Tom O'Sullivan. I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know Tom to start at all. I didn't know him. In fairness, you know, when you think this last number of years, you see this boy playing cornerback, just does his job quietly and efficiently and gets on with it, you know. But I didn't realize how good a footballer he was, apart from actually being able to silence a forward and just quietly take somebody out of the game. But his football ability was second to none as well. And such a modest young fella, you know, very quiet, keeps himself to himself and just gets on with the work. Like, so he probably is one of the players. But then then looking back, why should I be surprised? This is you know, Kerry never had really, you know, the cornerbacks were as good at footballers as the corner forwards. It always was the way, go back in the day. So, you know, I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised with how good he was on the ball, you know, for a cornerback. Like Jason Foley, again, in full back line, this kid was just so ready for getting better. Like, he had all the raw ingredients there and just needed just a little bit of coaching in terms of how he thinks about marking, how he thinks about playing a full back. And he, again, so receptive to everything you're doing. Tag Morley became a real leader as the year went on, and again, Tag was in and out of the squad this last few years, but I didn't realise how much an influence he would have on the rest of the players around him. And then as you go through the team, you realise, Jesus, these boys have so much more. Just they're good footballers, but also good. They're good lads, and they've all their own part to play in terms of how they blend the group as well. So, I think obviously you mentioned David. Like, you know, sometimes when you see somebody in the flesh, it's only when you really see them playing and in the flesh you realise how talented they are. You know, and some of the stuff he's able to do in training with the ball. You do see it now and again in the really talented footballers. It's just a joy to watch, you know.
Paddy, I know that you've spoken before about whenever a team comes to you, you're looking at a team, you're looking at the potential in the team. And, you know, with that Kerry team, you don't have to look too hard to see it. They were close, very close in 19. They they got caught cold in 20. They fell short against Tyrone in 21. When you look back on 22 and in general, it might be a bit of a surface level analysis here, but it didn't feel like that much had to change or that much change. And I don't want to do any disservice here, but like, is football really that simple? Like, you stop the goals going in, and you stop.
You try to basically say Paddy did nothing here now.
No.
I'm sure anyone could have done it, like.
without asking for state secrets, like, how difficult was it to get a defensive structure in place that won you the All-Ireland?
There's always work. Like, it's definitely not simple, because winning All-Ireland's hard. Like, any team that wins it, you know, boys, yourselves, Paddy and James, it's how tough it is to win All-Ireland. It's a very, very hard thing, and it's a hard thing in terms of getting your football right on the pitch, but psychologically you got to be really bang on, you know. And if you were to say to me what was maybe the difference in Kerry this year than since 18, 19, say from that time, maybe 19, 20, 21, whatever, maybe just maybe the fact that they'd be able to start grinding out results. And you just don't do that on the training field. That's a real process which you have to engage in, and it takes a whole management team to build that over a season, where boys then believe that no matter what happens in this game, they'll be able to handle it. And no matter what stage of the game is, we know what we have to do and stick to our process and get on with it. And that to me was the most satisfying thing, because that was a big part of what we had to do, was to change maybe the perception. My thing is to change the perception of actually how to win a game. We all want to win the game. We all want to win All-Ireland, but sometimes you have to change it. How do you win the game, and how do you win this All-Ireland? So when you get boys to buy into a sort of as much of a performance, psychological performance process, and once you get that right, then the football should look after itself, if you know what I mean, because you're taking a lot of the pressure off actually the result, and you're focusing very much on how to get there. And I think that to me was that's the hard work. That is really the hard work. You know, that's where you put a lot of the time into to get that right.
And just on a, sorry, Paddy, because it strikes a chord with my own experience as well. But if I was looking at Kerry, like, you can see 2 goals from play in the whole season: McCurry's goal and Killarney and kind of dead rubber, and then Costello's goal in the semi-final, which probably isn't even really on either. And so it's a brilliant record, but everyone's kind of looking in, and I was looking and going, this brilliant Kerry defensive record that they have, what is actually happening here? And it wasn't a case of if Kerry lose the ball, 15 lads sprint back into their own 45 and you park the bus. It wasn't that. Obviously, Ty Morley gets a lot of plaudits as kind of nearly protecting that centre channel and kind of giving the full back line a dig out. But the biggest difference I seen was nearly a mental thing, that guys like Dermot O'Connor, Jack Barry, Shawnee Shea, when Kerry lost the ball, there was just an awareness that we need to work hard to get this back. There was nearly defensive responsibility was in all the players' heads, which from playing against Kerry and success we would have had against them, we felt that was probably an area where we could get at them. And it reminds me, our Dublin team, Dublin winning that first All-Ireland with Pat Gilroy in 2011, Dublin were very much like that. We've good players, but we didn't win the tight games. We kind of struggled, exactly what you're saying, to win the process of actually winning a game. We knew we had good players, but what Pat did for about 6 months after Kerry beat us by about 100 points in 2009, so that started next season, he basically just said to all the forwards, you're being measured now on your tackle count. I don't care if you score 5 points from play. Every match you play, we're going to come in at half time, we're going to come in at full time, and we're like Bernard Brogan, Conal Keeney, Paddy Andrews in the full forward line. How many contact tackles did you get in the opposition? And because it was being measured, and all of a sudden, everyone in our team, but our forwards in particular, were kind of saying, the only thing he wants us to do was work hard to get the ball back. And it was nearly such an alien thing. It seemed so basic. But we went after that, and that started to change our perception of how we did things. And that started us on the journey of being kind of not really contenders for an All-Ireland to ultimately winning in 2011. And it just struck me looking at the Kerry team this year that we're not going to park the bus. And when we lose the ball, the supporters, the players probably wouldn't buy into that, but there was an awareness of responsibility to defend and just be harder to play against them. That is a process. That's hard to get everyone on board because you're talking to a full forward line here, Paddy. We don't like tackling, but it is. I don't think you can win without it.
Yeah.
Like, is there a conversation? Is it drills? Is it? You have to get that in.
Listen, boys, it's an entire season's work. Well, it's 7 months or 8 months work. You know, we started. Listen, in fairness, like Kerry come up. Geez, they only come up by a point, short by a point this last few seasons. Like you think this last few years, the Tyrone game last year, the Cork game the year before, which was a freaky result, and then on the COVID year, and then you had the Dublin game after replay in 19. So like there wasn't an awful lot wrong here, you know, in terms of Kerry being very, very competitive. But as you say, Paddy, is maybe just changing the perception from a forward what work looks like in terms of their defensive responsibility, and ensuring that every player buys into that. But I think the good thing about it was, if you look at the year, not only were they the best defensive team, but they're the best scoring team too across Ireland. So it's not as if you're taking away from one to Rob and Peter to play Paul. This team were actually doing it on both ends of the field, you know, which to me is very satisfying for the season, and doing it with a number of players and using a lot of players throughout the year as well. So I think that the perception of just changing, it wouldn't work in, you're right, it would not work in Kerry to turn around and say, listen, we're all going to play 15 behind the ball. And to be honest, it's not the way I ever coached my football teams either, unless it's a really, really limited team where you were under entire pressure. But you got to have a kicking game, you got to have an attacking game, you got to have a system that allows boys to play too. I'm not a big, by the way, Jack, I've said this to Kerry, I hate the word expressing themselves. That to me is like, you should do ballet or creative dance for that. Like, but it's I don't believe in that, but I do believe in the fact that you want players to play, and you have to score, and you have to create, and with players. But if you have good forwards, it'll be wrong to limit the way they play too. Like, so getting that balance. In fairness to Jack, James would know this more than I would, but certainly Jack is very much an advocate of kicking the ball. He loves the ball being played quick. He loves to transfer the ball quickly from defence to attack, and exactly. Yeah, and to me, that is just exactly why I love football played. You know, I love that type of attacking football. And you generally find the teams I coached over the years, we like that, you know.
Would I be right in saying that Paddy Tally was a corner forward himself back in the day, or were you half forward, or where did you play?
Mostly half forward.
Defensive half forward, Paddy.
No, in the 90s and early 90s, there was no defensive system. I think there was nothing. Donegal changed all that. I think even you look back to the 03 team, we weren't an overly defensive team in 03, but we were fucking fiercely hard working, like, you know, and the boys just loved getting rattled into the tackles. But we had a very good forward line. You know, if you look at the scoring forwards we had that time, the ball was played in early. We knew that on a one-on-one, these boys were able to will get away from the defenders. So although we worked extremely hard off the ball, we played a really good brand of football too. Like.
Can I ask you about that? Sorry, James, I'll let you back in a second. November 2002, there's a headline: New Tyrone manager Mickey Hart yesterday named sports science specialist Paddy Tally as his assistant. This nearly sounds like something out of the Wall Street Journal or a medical journal or something.
Yeah.
Was that, you're 29 years old, Paddy, in 2003 when you first go in there and with Mickey that winter? Like, what was that daunting? Going into that dressing room, like how long had you played with them? When was the last time you played for Tyrone when you went in as a coach at 29?
I suppose I was there in 95, 96, around that time, and the like Chris Lawn and Peter Canavan and Jerry Calvin were still there from that team. So Peter and I went to school together, went to St. Mary's together. We were good friends, and then in fairness, he's like David Clifford. You don't have to coach Peter; you just get him fit and put him out and play. Like, so there's no real coaching in some players. Like, but 29. Suppose I was young at the time, but I'd been working with the St. Mary's Sigerson team for a couple of seasons at that time. I'd been coaching them. I left college in 96, and you know college football's like, boys. Anybody wants to coach a team in college football, you soon get a job. Like, so a couple of years after I graduated, I was teaching in school, and I was and the fellow was looking after the ranch says, would I come down and take an odd session just to freshen things up, and I did. And I suppose I was around those couple of seasons, so I was getting a bit of an idea of coaching. That boys are coming in of county panels and they're coming into college to play football, and there's some really good college players that time, and you seriously, Jesus, nice coaching this level. So when Mickey asked me to come in November 2002, I was actually teaching. We were teaching again in St. Kieran's and Ballygolly. When he asked me to come in and do a bit of work now, it was a surprise. I couldn't believe it at the time. Like, and that you're asked to go in and work with a county. I had been asked by a couple of counties before that. Would I go in and work with teams, but at the time was playing club football, and I just felt it was too much for me. But an opportunity to work with your own team, plus knowing this is a serious outfit coming through. They'd won, as I said, they'd won 2 All-Ireland under 21s, they'd won 2 All-Ireland minors, and you knew these players were really, really good. So it was a dream opportunity for me at that age. The onus was then I had to be on top of my game too, because I knew the demands. Like, I knew Peter as a friend and as a player, but I knew the levels of which he would be expecting in there, because he was a completely ruthless competitor as a player, and I knew if I'm not up to my game here, he'll destroy me. I know, and that would be it. He would destroy you in the change room before a game if you weren't up to your game. He'd ripped you apart at half time. So I had to be on my game on the pitch, on the training field. But again, the players were very receptive. We changed things around a lot. I probably brought a new way of thinking to training, and we weren't sick in the corner, man. Like, you know, that was never ended. Like, you know, it wasn't approved. We get the boys sick and then they're training hard. It was very much done through the football. I remember at that time, I think the most out of a sprinted a player would have been 60, 70 meters, like without changing direction, because functionally it's not, what's the point here unless you're trying to replicate gameplay all the time. So, and then the sports science background, I just finished off a master's in sports science around, but I think it was around that time as well. And my thesis was on cryotherapy, on looking at ice baths and recovery protocols for high intensity exercise. It was great.
Are they any use, Paddy? Break the myth. Should lads be doing ice baths or not?
Purely placebo, but if it works, Paddy, you go for it.
Jeez, Paddy, I'm coming back playing. You don't have to run long, and you don't have to do ice baths. This is brilliant. Jeez.
I read Kieran.
Yeah, would you believe it? Actually, the ice baths are brilliant. I'm a big believer in them, and
I like them. I have to say,
I introduced them. It was really interesting, because I was trying to find out what I'm going to study this thesis, and I had no idea, because I was doing physiology for my module, and I was reading the paper one day, and they showed a picture of the England rugby team that were getting ready for the 2000 World Cup, and there's a photograph of these England boys standing in wheelie bins, you know, and the caption was, I think it was in the Guardian, said, "What are the England rugby boys doing standing in wheelie bins?" And I reading the article, a guy had them doing ice baths. They were standing submerged in ice. I thought, oh, geez, that's interesting there, and starting to read into it. Now, the time the evidence didn't actually say this is definitely going to work. But I thought, if these boys, if I started reading into it, there's definitely there's a
perception about it, isn't it?
This perception, but it's actually the boys, the interviews with some of the players, maybe being Graham Roundtree and a couple of players at that time, said, "This is brilliant. We feel really good after." So I remember the first night lads were brought into the throne training. It was like everyone
remembers their first ice bath, Paddy.
But it was unreal, because I couldn't get wheelie bins, or couldn't even handle them. So I went to this like B&Q home base type place, and I bought these like big plastic bins, right? And Mickey Moyne was sort of the kit man. I said, "Mickey, I want you to go and give me a big thing of ice." He goes, "What for?" And I just give me a big advice. And I explained to him that Mickey was very amenable to whatever has to be done, Paddy. When the boys come in after the training session, there's these 5 big buckets things sitting there. And I said, right, lads, the protocol is you have 2 minutes in the hot shower, 30 seconds in the ice bath, 2 minutes in the hot shower, and you do like a contrast bath type of thing, you know. Oh, geez, you want to hear the roaring and the shouting in the changing room environment. It was the best of crack. But even after the boys come out to have their food and they say, I feel great. The legs are my legs are throbbing here. I feel brilliant and lovely and warm. So here we did the rest of the season. They broke all the ice baths by the season was out, like, but it was great. It was great crack. But you know what it is? The study I did on it after that, subsequently I did that thesis on it, and there was a slight improvement in the blood lactate. We did some testing on high intensity sprints and multiples and vertical jump scores on high intensity exercise, and we found there's some improvement in performance. Not much, not significant, but if it's if it psychologically helps the players, you know, they felt good after, and sometimes that's all it takes, you know.
Paddy, it's 20 years in November since you walked in as a coach into an intercounty dressing room. Have dressing rooms changed much in that time? You've been involved throughout with Down. I think Ross Carr brought you in first in 08. You were in Down for 4 years. Derry with Brian McIver for 3 years. You obviously coached Mary's to that Sigerson title in 17. And we haven't had time to get to, you're with Galway in 18 with Kevin Welch when you get to that Ireland semi-final. Then you're an intercounty manager for 3 years with Down and a coach with Kerry. Have the personalities, have the characters changed? Yeah, I know mobile phones have become a big thing, but is there anything that sticks out there for you?
Fake tan. No, listen, no.
Kerry lads on the fake tan. I knew that.
No,
Jimmy, you look with a nice sheen off you there.
Beds only.
It's all natural down there. No, listen, I've said it so many times that footballers are the same no matter where you go, and I really mean that. I think any player that any county footballer is really serious about his trade, they're really the same no matter where you go. The change room dynamics nearly are all the same. You know, they are highly driven. They're big into what they do. They take it very, very seriously. So you get that all, no matter what it is. You have your characters. You have the boys that are vocal. You have the quiet lads in the corner. You have the serious guys. You'll have the ones that are the clowns. You have all of that, and everybody has them. Every team has them. The key is that I think in order to win anything, you need to be very tight as a group. You know, there has to be a very closeness, and I think you have to give great credit to Tony Griffin. The work Tony did with Kerry this year was phenomenal.
Great fella, yeah.
Geez, with great time for Tony.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I know he did a bit of work with Dublin in the past as well, and he's just a super guy. Like even off the field and every other way, and
inspirational, isn't he? Like
he is.
Things, yeah. He is.
He's great crack as well. Like, you know, and the boys really enjoyed the time with Tony, and I think the dynamic among the management team was really good. Like Jack's unique in terms of management. Like he's different to how a lot of managers are. He's an incredible grasp for football and knowledge and understand of actually what this is about. Now that's obviously so much experience, but you put Jack in there, and he knew what he needed in around him. He needed a coach. He needed Tony. He needed good selectors around him with Mike and Jim. He knew what was required to get these guys over the line. So I think that the dynamic was really, really strong, and I think it brought the best out of the change room. I think that's really important. You know, when you mentioned that there, Tommy, like about the change room, I'm a massive believer in the nearly it's a sanctuary. You know, whatever happens in there is crucial. I love it. I love the change room. I think that in game time or in training, I think that's a really special place to be. And if you're a young player getting onto a county squad, being in that room with all the best you have in that county, like you feel, I am one of the 35 or I'm one of this squad, and that gives you great confidence to start with. And all you need then is a few leaders that are going to bring you in and make you feel important and make you feel you're valued in there. And I think that's fairness. There was no hierarchy in the Kerry change room. There is none. There is absolutely no egos in there. They respect each other fully. And I think that successful teams are like that. You know, you don't have that boys feeling above anybody else.
You can't be successful without that, Paddy, isn't it? Like everyone has to be same direction. You'll have superstar players and stuff. Absolutely, that's just the nature of it. But we've all played in teams that have been successful and unsuccessful. And you're right, the atmosphere and the energy around the group is massive. It's hard to hard to put a number on it or put a value on it, but you know when it's there and you know when it's not. And any team that's been successful has that camaraderie and that atmosphere in the group. I just have a question for Paddy in it. The role, inter-county backroom teams are kind of more and more in the spotlight. And we see Dublin, kind of started with Dublin, we had 20 people there. And I was going, Jesus, who were all these guys? What are they all doing? We've seen the Kerry team, backroom team over the last couple of weeks as well. And there's more emphasis and there's more people asking about the role of coaches and selectors. And we've seen it yourself getting a lot of kind of people asking about Paddy Tally and what's he doing, what's he bringing to the team. Keane O'Neill and Galway, very similar. We had Declan Darcy, Jason Sherlock. What are these guys actually doing there? And for me, listening to you and my thoughts on here and reading through what you've done, the role of a manager is very different to the role of a coach. Like you're saying with Jack, Jim Gavin was saying, you're probably not on the pitch. You're the figurehead overseeing this 15 or 20 person backroom team. You're dealing with the county board, the media, and then you're dealing with 35 players, bringing lads in or dropping them or whatever. Whereas the role of a coach is you're on the pitch. You're in with the lads. You're every single minute on the pitch, kicking ball. You've managed down as a manager for a couple of years. You've managed Mary's to win a Sigerson, but the majority of your stuff has been coaching and being on the pitch. What do you prefer doing? And do you see yourself maybe down the line going back into a head manager role and maybe taking a step back from the pitch?
Yeah, it's a completely different role. Not completely different role. Like when you're managing, you're also coaching as well. Even when I was managing down, I was doing a lot of the coaching as well. And the coaching to me, coaching is the key. To me, is the key. You know, I feel as if you can't just be a manager without coaching. If you know what I mean, you have to be. Okay,
some people can though.
I don't know. I don't know how you can do that. I think you have to have your imprint on the team, you know, and you have to have an imprint on the way you want the team to play. If you have a philosophy or a way when you set your team up, like you got to put your hands all over that. Even when I was managing it down, I had good coaches with me in it, but they would coach certain aspects, but it come to actually the team play or the way the team set up or certain aspects. That was my remit. I took full responsibility for that. In the Kerry setup, it's great because the management's completely looked after by Jack, and it gives me 100% focus to work on what we're doing on the field and setting up whatever has to be done in terms of the process, if you want to call it, you know, the coaching process and the way we play the game. So that it's a fantastic role to have without any of the rest of it. Doesn't. 50%.
It's more enjoyable, Paddy. I sense, and I get you probably enjoy it more as well.
Yeah,
hands on the coaching piece. Yeah,
but I think there's with management, you spend 50% of your time doing stuff that's nothing to do with football at all. You know, and that's a lot of time, like, you know, because you're dealing with all sorts of other issues and down we're fighting fire nearly all the time because there's something coming down the line. You didn't really know nearly from week to week what was coming around the corner because there was so much going on in that county, and it was fantastic in one way, a great learning experience, but also when you look back and go, God, you know, coming out of it alive was as good as I could probably get out of it, like, you know. So it was really, really testing. Whereas in this job with Kerry, you have a very clear role. You're within there, you're the coach, you have a job to do, and in fairness, Jack gave me a really, you know, sort of a nearly carte blanche to get on with it, and it was great. And I was able to, no matter what I was doing, run past with Jack, this I'm going to introduce this week, I was going to bring over the next month, this is going to be working at, this is going to do. And Jack said, yep, let's go with that. I suppose it was a relief for him too, that he could offload a lot of stuff on him. I know in the past Jack would have done a lot of the on-field coaching himself, so I think it was good for him at this stage to be able to say to someone, you know, I trust you to get on with the work, like. Yeah.
Just I have one question on this year, Paddy, right? Obviously, it was my first year looking on as a fan, right? And supporter. So you have very different emotions. You've obviously no control up in the stand, right? So
he was wearing a full Kerry kit in the press box, Paddy. It was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It was very strange watching a game from so far away, right? When you're so invested in the lads and everything. So even as a coach, kind of your work is done, say, the Thursday before the game in a lot of senses. And then in the games, Dublin were hounding Kerry down when Costello got the goal. Yeah. We were kind of under pressure there. At halftime in the Galway game, we were kind of under pressure. You didn't know how it was going to go. Did you feel worried at any stage in those games, or was it complete calmness all through? because there were times where there was almost, not that it could go either way, but it's really in the melting pot now.
Yeah, not really. To be honest with you, James, both the Dublin game and the Galway game, I was probably more relaxed than I was in other games this season. I think at that stage, you knew this Kerry team were ready. There wasn't much more we could have done. And I think you have to then have confidence that the work's been done, and now they've got to go out and perform. Now, there was that, like, let's say the Kerry, the Dublin match, I think we were 6 up in a really, really good position, and then we're caught for a goal that just turned the game, and then they got a point straight after, and all of a sudden the game went from 6 points to 2 points within a minute. But you're saying, right, this is only one goal. We don't concede too many goals, so I don't think we're going to concede another one. It's a matter of just reestablishing themselves, keeping their feet level, and absorb this pressure. The other thing, you knew that Dublin were going to come strong, the same as Galway. The third quarter is infamous in Dublin, that you knew that the third quarter was going to be the time. Galway the same. If you look at Galway's performance over the season, I think they're plus 4.5 across the season in the third quarter. So you knew that was going to be a big time. If you look back at that Dublin teams, you knew the third quarter they were going to come strong. So if you could absorb the third quarter and you could get out of it, you knew the thing will tape off a bit. I think in fairness, I think in the Dublin game, there was incredible composure shown by the Kerry players in the face of that Dublin pressure. The last 3 kickoffs, off short, Shane Ryan found
Brian Bigley, unreal,
2 and Tag for 1. And off those 3 kickouts we got 2 points. So the composure, that was probably one of the changes.
Isn't that the big thing? And people used to laugh at us because they thought we were just kind of taking the mick. Sticking to the process is massive. At that stage of the championship, it is. There's so little between the top teams. And you're right, winning an All-Ireland is fucking hard work. You are not going to cruise to one. You are going to be tested, pushed to the pin of your collar, because it's the pinnacle of the game. You need to expect that. And being able to deal with that and being able to understand that we're going to be under pressure, this team, whoever it is, a Mayo, a Galway, a Dublin, a Kerry, are going to get a purple patch. We need to just stick with our game plan. We need to manage this. We need to have leaders on the pitch. We need to have leaders on the sideline, that when the pressure comes on, we know what needs to happen. And you're right, that does not happen overnight. That's experience for the players that maybe they haven't done it before, and they learn from that. But it's also the coaches and the environment, preparing guys, the mental side of things. When the pressure is on, this is what we have to do. Like kickouts with Shane Ryan, we had it with Stephen, or like opposition kickouts, or just moments in the game where you need to stick with the process. And again, I'm looking at Kerry this season in those tight moments, those big plays. They managed those situations best and better than anyone else. Paddy Clifford was brilliant in second half of both the semi-final and final when Kerry are under the cosh. You're 10 minutes down the stretch when Galway get it back to 16-all, and you're thinking, have Galway one more sting in the tail? Kerry you win the last 10 minutes of that game 4-0. That's sticking to the process. And you just got the sense that was a mentality that Kerry had for the entire season. That seemed different to previous years.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the belief and the confidence that was built into those guys over the course of the season. You know, confidence comes from knowledge and understanding. That's the college. You can't have confidence without either knowing those two. But they knew and understood how to win games throughout the season. You go back to the Mayo game in the league. Jack referenced it after the final, and I always remember that night. It's an incredible night.
I was sitting in Tralee. It was
rain,
was it? Yeah. It was a great game of football as well. Yeah, proper
brilliant game, and they had to carve out a result because the game was level. Had to work a short free, and exactly all the guys come off the bench end up creating the winning score. You know, so it was sort of set a template early in the season. Right? You know, you can grind out a result when it's tight here, and I think throughout the year, there was lots of instances out in games where there's pressure coming on, and it's really important to highlight that to the players as the year goes on, that, you know, when you do see it happening, you have to say to them, you know, this is an example of where you did this. So it might happen. It could happen in a McGrath Cup match in the early season, but we keep reinforcing that. And as the year went on, we kept looking for those opportunities to say to the players, listen, you've been here, and when the time comes in a really, really tight match, you can carve out those plays, and that comes down to maybe that builds mental strength, and when you win All Ireland, you got to have that mental toughness built into it. So otherwise, you're gonna come up short.
Yeah, you could see that. Paddy Tally, you've been.
I have one more question, Tommy.
We're going to go morning, Paddy.
I'd keep going for an hour here. You're the one
who's got 10 questions as well, Paddy.
This is off script, all right. But say if you had to take one forward from your Tyrone 2003 team, right? You got your Dooher, your Mulligan, Stephen O'Neill.
There was a guy called Peter Canavan in that team,
and you had to put one of them, not Canavan. You had to put one of them into the Kerry forward line at the moment. Who would you take?
Stevie O'Neill.
Stevie, yeah. Jeez, imagine if it was for Clifford and Stephen O'Neill. Jesus Christ.
I was obsessed with Stephen O'Neill and Mulligan as well.
Talk to us about Stevie, Paddy, for a minute there.
Stevie was just something else. Like, you know, you don't
sick joke.
You just realise how good this lad was. Like, I remember he came to he played for the Ranch back, and this is my first time. He'd won. He's so modest. Like, if you know Stevie at all, he's the most modest kid you'll ever meet. Like. And he came to St. Mary's to play college football, and I was watching this kid playing. Jeez, I never seen anything like him. Like, he was incredible. Like, you know, and he scored 10 points in the match and walk off the field. Just like, you know, what's the deal here? And he wouldn't be in his. And this is the most modest guy you meet. But that season, like remember, Stephen didn't start the All Ireland final. Like, he only come on the All Ireland final in 2003, and he just knew that there will be a time when he's going to come on here and win the game. He scored two of the last few points and he scored the last point and won the All Ireland. And it wasn't as if he wasn't good enough. He was the best forward bar Peter, but he just also knew that we needed a game changer. Yeah. And fair play to him to stay up. And then in the subsequent years after that, he just proved what an incredible player.
But I marked him once, Paddy. Shockingly enough, my corner back there.
What were you doing back there?
That's what I thought as well. That's what I thought.
Right.
And I swear to God, we played him in Croker the opening night of the league. 09 it would have been. Somehow I was cornerback.
I remember.
Do you remember the point that he kicked from 5 yards?
I swear to God, he got the ball on the end line, like on the end line in the canal end. And I'm there thinking, one, I'm shitting myself because I know I shouldn't be back there. So I'm just going, he can't do anything from there. Kind of let him shoot on his wrong side, like, and he literally kicks the ball over the bar from the end line on the wrong side. I was looking at him. There was a gasp of the crowd. He kind of trots back out, and Mulligan laughs to me. I'm jogging back out, going, "What the fuck have I got myself in for here?" And Muggsy comes across. He goes, "He's something else, isn't he?" And I was like, "Oh, you fucking know." And that was it. I remember just being in the presence of something that was not normal.
No, that's right.
And we say it with Clifford when we're reviewing David Clifford's games, and go, there's players that come along and. We know how hard it is at the highest level to try and kick scores, but there's guys that just do things that are not normal. And Stephen O'Neill was one of them. Yeah. First-hand experience.
He's just one of those players you'd love to have in your team. And actually, I remember when he was coming through, I remember myself and Peter talking about Canavan, and he's saying he never saw anything like him. He actually said to me, "I've never seen anything like Stevie O'Neill," and he's right. He was, boys. This guy was phenomenal. Like, you know, left, right. Like those few years, like that point that you mentioned, Paddy. I remember us sitting, everybody watching that game, going, "Jesus, Paddy Andrews shouldn't be back there."
I agree. I 100% agree. Thank God I got out of there sooner rather than later.
With all that experience, Paddy, in the game and the coaches you worked with and playing with Canavan, can you put into context where David Clifford is at, even in training or being around him, or, you know, some of the scores that he nailed in the All-Ireland final, like the shooting between himself and Shane Walsh that day was off the charts?
Yeah, the two boys it was great. And Shane, look, I worked with him for a year in 18, like, and realised how good this lad was. Like, Shane was a phenomenal player, really, really talented lad. David, the same. I think it's David, he's only 23. Yeah. You know, I think his best football still to come. And all be well, he stays injury free and he looks after himself and things work out for him. For Kerry, I suppose the big thing is to make sure that other players are taking the pressure off David, because you know there will be days when David is double marked and kept quiet and has some responsibility for other players to step up. But as an individual, like he's quite unique because he's also very powerful and strong. He's now brought a bit of an aerial game into it too. Like this year, the 2 marks he took in the final were great, and he's starting now to attack the ball in the air, which maybe hadn't done in the past. So he still has work to do. You know, it's great that he has still so much more to improve on. I think the best of David Clifford is still to become.
Jesus Christ!
Can I ask
Nobody wouldn't say that.
Can I ask James a question?
Go for it, yeah.
James, is that your trophy cabinet beside you there?
He always just tries to have a little bit of an on show, Paddy. He's an ego.
My mother's nice china.
Donahue, put it the other way.
The Waterford Crystal Collection.
Put it the other way. I know it's over the other side.
There's nothing over the other side. Huh?
Good lad.
Paddy, happily would have kept you another hour, and it strikes me now that I should have actually just got Paddy Tally's favourite 15 that he's coached over the years, but that was fantastic.
That'll be good crack.
Yeah, we'll do that again. Thanks so much for joining us on the Football Pod. It was brilliant to have you on, and well done on the year just gone by. James O'Donoghue, Paddy Andrews, thank you both very much again. Have a good day at work.
Yeah,
and we'll catch up next week on the Football Pod. Paddy Tally,
Hey,
thank you.
Thanks a million. Congratulations, Paddy.
Thanks, Paddy.
Well done.